In the heart of Enugu, where love and poverty often wrestle in silence, one young man made a choice that changed the course of his life forever. He had the purest love in the arms of a poor village girl, yet when wealth knocked on his door, he traded her heart for a mansion. But what he did not know was that money gained through betrayal carries a curse, and curses have a way of crawling back in the night. The sun was sinking behind the rolling Udi hills, casting long golden fingers across the red earth. The air smelled of roasted maize from the village square and the faint smoke of evening cooking fires. It was the hour when children ran home with dusty feet and mothers shouted their names from bamboo fences. But for Chika and Amara, it was the time their hearts came alive. Cheek was the kind of young man whose ambition burned brighter than the lanterns of the village. Tall and lean, with a restless fire in his eyes, he carried the dreams of escaping poverty on his shoulders. Though he wore a patched shirt and walked barefoot most days, his mind was never barefoot. He was always running ahead, imagining a life far beyond the clay huts of their small Enugu village. Amara, on the other hand, was beauty carved in simplicity. Her skin glowed like the morning sun after rainfall. Her laughter rang like the song of a flute, and her eyes, deep, dark, and patient, held a kind of peace Cheek never found anywhere else. She was the daughter of a poor palm wine tapper who struggled daily to put food on the mat, yet she carried herself with a quiet dignity that made mockery of her circumstances. Their love was not written in books or sung in songs. It was whispered in the rustling of tall elephant grass, carved in the paths they traced with their bare feet, and sealed under the shadow of Udi hills where no one dared follow. It was their sanctuary, their palace of dreams in a world that mocked their poverty. Every evening, when the sky painted itself in orange and purple, Cheek would sneak away from his mother's compound and climb the narrow footpath that led to the hills. Amara would already be there, sitting on the flat rock they called their throne. Sometimes she carried roasted groundnuts wrapped in old newspapers. Other times just her laughter and stories from the day. "Chike," she would say with that playful smile that could melt the hardest of hearts. "One day you will be a great man, and these hills will be too small for your dreams." And Cheek, gazing at her as though she was the future itself, would reply, "What is greatness without you, Amara? These hills may be small, but they are wide enough to hold our love." They talked about everything, of Lagos with its shining lights, of a life where they would live in a house with glass windows, of children with bright eyes running around them. For those few stolen hours, poverty was not their story. Love was. But the world beyond Udi Hills was not blind. Villagers whispered about their closeness. Elders scoffed at Cheek's stubbornness in wasting his time on the daughter of a poor palm wine tapper. His own mother, Mama Chike, would shake her head and say, "Love does not cook soup, my son. You will marry wealth, not hunger." Yet under the shadow of the hills, those voices never reached. There, Cheek and Amara built a kingdom out of laughter and promises, swearing that nothing, not poverty, not parents, not the world, would tear them apart. But Udi Hills had watched many lovers before, and the hills knew what Chiki and Amara did not. That love, pure as it may be, is always tested by the weight of the world. The morning sun rose over the red roofs of Udi town, its heat already biting before the day could properly begin. Cheek wiped the sweat from his brow as he bent over the stubborn soil. His hoe struck the ground again and again, but the earth yielded little more than dry dust and mocking stones. He had spent hours on the farm, yet his harvest of cassava looked pitiful, barely enough to feed his mother, let alone to dream of building a future with Amara. At the edge of the farm, he dropped the hoe and sat under a mango tree. His chest rose and fell with the exhaustion of a young man chasing dreams, too heavy for his calloused hands. "Chike," a neighbor passing by with a basket of yams, called out with a smirk. You dey suffer yourself. Now this small farm go feed Amara when Una marry? Better open your eyes. Love no dey cook soup. The man's laughter stung worse than the midday sun. Chaik forced a smile, but inside his heart throbbed with shame. That was not the first time he had heard such words. In fact, it had become the song of the village. Mockery for daring to love a poor palm wine tapper's daughter when better options surrounded him. In the evenings when he walked with Amara, children would whisper and giggle, and elders would shake their heads knowingly. A fine boy like Chaika wasting his youth, they would mutter. Does he not know that Amara is a liability? Let him marry into money and stop disgracing himself. The whispers grew louder each day until they reached the ears of his mother. She was a woman whose sharp tongue could cut through stone, and she had no patience for what she called her son's foolishness. One hot afternoon, as Cheek returned from the farm with mud caked on his legs, she confronted him at the compound. "Chaik," she barked, arms akimbo, wrapper tied tightly around her waist. "So this is how you want to waste your life? Look at your hands, blistered like an old man's. And for what? For Amara, the daughter of that poor palm wine tapper who cannot even buy salt without borrowing?" Chaik sighed, setting down the small bundle of cassava. "Mama, Amara may not have riches, but she has a good heart. She respects me. She believes in me." "Respect?" Mama Chaik scoffed, her voice rising. "Will respect buy you a motor car? Will it build a house in the city? My son, shine your eyes. Poverty is not a disease you should inherit. You are my only child. Don't let me die in shame." "Mama, don't mama me," she snapped, pointing a finger at him. "You think love is enough? Go and look at Ngozi, Chief Iza's daughter. She just returned from Lagos, fresh like morning bread. Her father has wealth. Her family has connections. That is the kind of woman you should marry, not one that will drag you down." Cheek lowered his eyes, torn between duty to his mother and the fire of love that burned in his chest for Amara. Every word Mama Chaik spoke stabbed him with the harsh reality of their poverty. He knew she was right about the struggles, but could wealth truly replace the joy he found in Amara's laughter? That night, lying awake on his raffia mat, Cheek heard the whispers of the villagers echoing in his head, louder than the crickets. "Love Nodi cook soup. Marry into money. Forget Amara." He turned to the wall, pressing his eyes shut, but Amara's face appeared in his mind. Her smile, her soft voice, her faith in him. Chaik's heart thudded with confusion. Poverty was pressing him on one side, love pulling on the other. He did not know then that the choice he would eventually make would haunt him for the rest of his life. The dusty road leading into Udi village had never seen such a spectacle. By late afternoon, children ran barefoot, shouting and pointing as a long convoy of shiny jeeps rolled in, their horns blaring like a parade. Women paused from pounding fufu, their pestles midair, and men at the palm wine joint abandoned their cups to see the unusual sight. Ngozi had returned. She stepped out of the lead vehicle like a character from another world. Gold bangles clinked around her wrists, her red heels dug into the laterite ground, and her bright yellow dress sparkled under the blazing sun. Even her handbag, a designer one that the villagers had only seen in magazines, drew whispers of awe. "She done turn Oyinbo woman oh," someone muttered. See as Lagos done Polish her." Ngozi's father, Chief Obadiah, the wealthiest trader in Udi, beamed with pride. His booming voice carried across the crowd. "My people, my daughter is back from Lagos, and I say it loud, she's very much single and searching. Whoever wins her heart wins my all," he said like a typical African man. The crowd erupted in cheer. Men exchanged greedy glances. Mothers with lazy sons nudged them forward. already dreaming of bride price returns. But in the shadows of the market square, Amara stood quietly, her heart sinking. She didn't need anyone to tell her what this meant. Ngozi wasn't just beautiful. She carried wealth like a crown, and wealth was a language Chike's family understood too well. Later that evening, Cheek's friends gathered around him at Mama Abley's palm wine hut. They leaned close, their words dripping with temptation. Chike, forget Amara Abeg. See her life, still hustling farm to farm, still begging for yam seedlings. This is your chance to escape poverty. Chief Obadiah's daughter? My guy, if you marry her, you'll wear fine suits, drive fine motors. You think love go feed you? Another one smirked. You'd a chase small village girl when Lagos money just land for your feet. Shine your eyes, Chike. If I'm as handsome as you, guy, I would grab this opportunity, one added. Cheek sipped his calabash of palm wine in silence, but deep inside his heart battled itself. Images of Amara waiting under the mango tree, smiling with her pure eyes, clashed with the loud, glittering arrival of Ngozi and the riches she represented. That night, as the moon stretched its silver light across the village, Amara waited at their secret spot beneath the tall trees of Udi Hills. She traced the initials they had carved on the bark, CA forever, but Chike didn't come. He was lying awake in his mother's hut, Mama Chike's voice ringing in his ears. My son, poverty is a disease. Don't let that poor girl tie your destiny. Go where there is money, or you will suffer like your father. This is once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Don't miss it for anything. You already have the potentials, his mother insisted. The war between love and wealth had begun. Amongst all the young men gathered in Chief Obadiah's compound, Chike was the only one that caught Ngozi's fantasy. His mother and friends erupted in joy as he was the chosen one. The evening air was heavy, as though the village themselves knew that something sacred was about to be shattered. Amara sat beneath the familiar tree at the base of Udi Hills, her heart dancing with anticipation. She clutched the raffia basket of roasted ground nuts she had prepared for Cheek, smiling faintly as she remembered the promises he had made. No matter what, it will always be you and me. But when Chike arrived, he was not the same man she knew. His eyes avoided hers, his steps were cold and calculated, and the warmth that once wrapped her like a blanket was gone. Amara, he began, his voice strained, we cannot continue like this. She laughed nervously, thinking it was one of his playful tricks. Chike, stop it. You almost scared me. I am serious, he said flatly, his jaw tightening. You and I, it cannot work. My mother is right. I need a future, and love cannot feed a man. Ngozi is better for me. Amara's smile fell. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. She stumbled back, clutching the groundnut basket until it slipped from her trembling hands, scattering across the dirt. You are joking, Cheek. Tell me you are joking, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. I am not joking, Cheek muttered. His words cut sharper than a blade. Go home, Amara, forget me. We were just children playing with dreams. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then came the sound of Amara's cries, raw and piercing, rising into the night air. Her voice carried across the village, echoing off Udi Hills like a sorrowful song no one could silence. Her father, who had warned her of loving too deeply, heard her cries and came rushing. When he saw his daughter collapsed on the ground, wailing like a broken child, his rage knew no bounds. He turned to Chika, his eyes blazing. So you abandoned my daughter because of wealth? May the gods bear witness. You shall have your wealth, Chika, but it will never bring you peace. You will see riches, but you will never taste joy. The curse lingered in the air like smoke. Chike stood frozen, but pride held his tongue. Without a word, he walked away into the night, leaving Amara clutching the dirt, her tears soaking into the earth that had once cradled their love. That night, the village whispered, and Udi Hills, once their place of love, became the silent keeper of a broken heart. The day dawned bright, with drums already beating across the village square. It was not just a wedding, it was a festival. Chaika was marrying Ngozi, the daughter of the wealthy Lagos trader whose riches spoke through the long convoy of cars that rumbled into Udi. For the first time, the small village witnessed imported wines, musicians dressed in matching Ankara uniforms, and dancers spraying glittering powder into the air. Women gathered in their finest wrappers, their eyes wide with envy. The men nodded, whispering, "Cheek has made it. He has joined the wealthy. No more farm boy struggling in the sun." Chaik, clad in a shimmering Isiagu gold embroidery, stood tall before everyone. He smiled with pride as elders hailed him. His mother, adorned in new lace, could barely hide her excitement. Tears of joy rolled down her cheeks as she murmured, "Finally, my son has escaped poverty. God don butter our bread." Ngozi, the bride, glittered in her elaborate gown, her wrists heavy with gold bangles that clinked each time she moved. She walked as though the ground was beneath her chin lifted, her pride loud. But somewhere, hidden among the crowd, Amara stood with her wrapper tied tightly around her waist. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from nights of weeping. She watched the man she loved, the man who once promised her the world, hold another woman's hand. Each cheer from the crowd was like a knife stabbing deeper into her chest. When the both families blessed their union, the villagers shouted, "Issei!" The drummers beat harder, and money sprayed like rain. But in that joyous noise, Amara's silent sobs were drowned. She clutched her chest and whispered to herself, "Cheek, why?" Her father, standing behind her, trembled with rage. His voice cut through the wind like thunder. "Chaik, may you have gold but never joy. May your riches taste like ashes in your mouth. As you poured tears into my daughter's heart, so shall tears never depart from your home." Nobody heard his words clearly, but those close enough felt a chill. The wedding feast went on, music rising, laughter booming. But in the shadows of Udi Hills, a curse had already been planted. Chaik smiled that night, thinking he had won the world. But the gods were watching. The compound of Cheek's new mansion glistened with tiles imported from faraway lands. The air smelled of perfume and roasted meat every evening, for Ngozi entertained guests as though every day were a festival. The people who once mocked Chika now bowed when he passed, whispering about his sudden rise. But inside the tall iron gates and fancy mansion, the truth was bitter. Ngozi was not the wife he had imagined. She was beautiful, yes. Her clothes sparkled like the Lagos sun. Her laughter carried across the village, but her tongue was sharper than a warrior's spear. She mocked Cheek's farming roots, ridiculed his mother for her village manners, and treated the servants as though they were slaves. "Chaik, stop behaving like a bush boy," she snapped one morning, tossing her wig onto the bed. "You think this house runs on love? You must learn to live like people of class. Don't embarrass me with your poor background. My father made you—" Chiki swallowed his words, but his heart burned. In the quiet of the night, when the feasts were over and the compound was silent, his mind would wander to Amara. He remembered her gentle hands that once washed his torn shirts by the river, her quiet laughter when they shared roasted corn under the mango tree. Ngozi, unlike Amara, never sat to hear his dreams. She was always gone, attending meetings in Abuja, or riding in sleek cars with men Sheik did not know. Once he asked her why she returned home so late, her clothes smelling of alcohol. She had laughed in his face. "Don't ask me foolish questions, Cheek. If you want a submissive village girl, Go back to that Amara of yours." The words pierced him like a knife. Even when he reported to his father about his daughter's mannerless attitude, he got more shocking responses than he thought. "That's the price you pay for dinning with wealth." Even Mama Chaik, who had once danced with joy at her son's wealthy marriage, began to notice the cracks. One afternoon, she visited from the village to see Ngozi scolding a servant harshly, throwing food to the ground. The old woman shook her head and muttered, "Obadiah, peace is the beauty of a home. This wealth is cursed." Chaik could not sleep. His bed was soft, his pocket full, but his heart empty. Sometimes his mind would wander to the edge of the Udi Hills, remembering the paths where he and Amara once carved their names into tree trunks. He had everything he thought he wanted, yet joy had fled from his house. And somewhere in the quiet of the village, Amara's father's curse lingered in the air. "You will see wealth, but never joy." The market of Enugu buzzed with the usual chaos: hawkers shouting prices, buyers haggling, the smell of roasted corn and fresh palm wine in the air. Chaik walked through, dressed in a fine senator outfit, yet his eyes carried a heaviness that no amount of wealth could wash away. It had been nearly 6 years since he last saw Amara. The memory of her face, soaked in tears the night he betrayed her, still haunted him like a stubborn ghost that refused to leave. He often wondered where she was, whether she had married, or if she still remembered him. Then, like fate playing a cruel trick, he saw her. Amara. She stood at a stall, gracefully directing her workers as they loaded gallons of palm oil into a lorry. She wore a simple but elegant wrapper, her head tie neat, her steps confident. She wasn't the poor village girl anymore. This was a woman reborn, carrying herself with dignity and quiet power. Chaik froze. His heart hammered against his chest. His lips parted, but no words came out. She turned slightly, her eyes catching his. For a brief second, time stopped. Her gaze was calm, steady. Not the gaze of a broken girl, but of a woman who had survived the fire and come out stronger. "Amara," Chaik whispered, almost trembling. She looked at him, her lips forming the faintest smile, though it held no warmth. "Chaik, hi." Her voice was soft, but it cut through him sharper than a blade. Chaik's friends who accompanied him to the market greeted her with exaggerated respect. Everyone seemed to know her now. Amara, the successful palm oil merchant who supplied traders as far as Lagos and Abuja. Her name carried weight. Chiki felt small in her presence despite his wealth. The arrogance of Ngozi's world seemed useless compared to the quiet dignity Amara carried. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain, but guilt choked his words. He watched as she continued giving instructions, ignoring the tremor in his voice. She was no longer the girl who cried for him. She was a woman who no longer needed him. And in that moment, Cheek realized poverty had not destroyed Amara. His betrayal had sharpened her into a diamond. The rumor began like a whisper in the neighborhood. At first, Cheek dismissed it. Idle talk, jealous tongues, he told himself. But deep in his chest, unease grew like a fire that refused to die. Ngozi's late nights, her sudden trips to Abuja, the expensive jewelry she flaunted without explanation, none of it made sense. One fateful evening, the truth slammed into him like a hammer on iron. Chaik returned home earlier than expected, only to find Ngozi absent. Her driver, nervous and sweating, accidentally muttered she was at Honorable's lodge. Chaik's heart pounded as he drove there, every beat louder than the last. The lodge gates opened too easily, and the sight before him froze his soul. Ngozi, his wife dressed in silk, laughing, sipping wine, her hands resting shamelessly on Chief Okafor's knee. The room spun. A red mist clouded Chick's vision. "Ngozi!" he thundered. his voice shaking the very walls. She turned, startled, but quickly rolled her eyes, smirking with no shame. "Chaik, you should not be here," she said, cold and dismissive, as though he were the intruder. Rage consumed him. He lunged, grabbing the chief by the collar, fists flying. Furniture scattered, wine glasses shattered, guards rushed in. It was chaos, raw, humiliating chaos. The scandal erupted across Udi like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone knew Ngozi had betrayed her husband. Chike, once the pride of his mother and the envy of his peers, became the laughingstock of his hometown. The same villagers who had mocked him for loving Amara now shook their heads. So this is the price of marrying money. Alone in his mansion, Chika wept bitterly. For the first time he remembered Amara's gentle smile, her prayers, her loyalty. But it was too late. His wealth now tasted like ash. He wished he could turn back the hands of time. The curse of Amara's father whispered in the wind. You will see wealth, but never joy. Ngozi filed for divorce after the embarrassment, and that comes with stripping Cheek off the wealth he acquired through her. He returned to nothing. The once proud compound of Cheek now looked like a shadow of its former glory. The cars that once lined his yard had been repossessed. The big house that echoed with music and parties now felt like a tomb, heavy with silence. It started slowly, whispers in the village square. Business deals falling through. Politicians who once clapped him on the back now avoided his calls. His name, once spoken with envy, became a proverb for foolishness. Chiki sat on his veranda, his hands on his head, his face leaner than it had ever been. Is this how a man falls? He muttered, his voice cracked with shame. The same friends who had urged him to pursue Ngozi now laughed behind his back. And his mother? Oh, Mama Cheik. She sat by the hearth, her blouse loose around her shoulders, staring into the fire with tears that refused to fall. The pride that had once swelled her chest was gone. Cheik, my son, she whispered, I pushed you into this. I thought wealth was everything. But what is wealth without joy? What is gold when your heart is empty? One evening he went to Amara's house with his mother to properly ask for forgiveness. Tears fall from Cheik's eyes as he kneels before her. Amara, I wronged you. I chose wealth over love, and I lost both. Forgive me even if you can't take me back. My daughter, please forgive. I pushed him to his downfall. I thought I knew better, please, Noam. Forgive, she said, kneeling with his son. Mama, you couldn't even visit me when I lost my father, not even for humanity's sake. Amara turned to Cheik, her eyes soft but heavy with years of pain. Cheik, the wound you gave me almost killed me, but I learned to rise, and I'm grateful for your betrayal. Amara, please, I know I don't deserve your mercy, but forgiveness is all I seek, please, he begged. You wouldn't be here if she's everything you wanted. If things had gone your way, you wouldn't be seeking forgiveness, Amara said without flinching. And Shiki looked so downcasted. If forgiveness is what you seek, I forgive you, but hold on, Amara said and went inside. She returned with an envelope. Here, she said, handing it to Chika. That's my wedding invitation card that's coming up next week. It would be my pleasure for you to witness me marrying the absolute love of my life, just like I witnessed yours, Amara said with a soft, wicked smile. Her wedding was the talk of town. There was a lot to eat and drink. Cheik faced shimmer with regrets as he watched how happily in love she is with her husband. He wished he could turn back the hands of time. Money without peace is poverty in disguise. A man who trades true love for wealth is only borrowing happiness, and debts must always be paid.